The spoilers for Beyond the Gates airing on Friday, March 6th, focus on Jacob's new assignment, one that accidentally threatens his entire undercover operation. And just as that happens, viewers will finally learn who in BTG is connected to the terrifying plasma ring. The key points to remember are these. Jacob's new mission unintentionally places his entire undercover operation in severe danger. Will Jacob be exposed now that this new assignment is spiraling out of control? A shocking and unexpected reveal will expose the identity of those tied to the dangerous plasma ring. Who is the hidden figure within the plasma ring, and whose life will they destroy first? Anita's heartfelt surprise gift for Vernon suddenly becomes difficult to carry out when her health takes a troubling turn. Is Anita going to be all right, or will the gift she prepared for Vernon become their most heartbreaking moment yet? This is no longer just a simple investigation. Everything has now turned into a slow tightening noose, where every buried secret begins to tremble like a bomb waiting to explode in the heart of Fairmont Crest. On the surface, that glamorous world is still covered in flawless suits, polished diplomatic smiles, and elegant dinners that look as though nothing has ever rotted underneath. But behind it all, a cold darkness is crawling through every house, every hallway, and every seemingly harmless encounter. At the center of that storm stands Jacob, a man who has sacrificed almost his entire real life to step into a game where one wrong move will cost far more than his own life. It could cost Naomi, his family, and the entire operation that he and Smitty have risked everything to build. Jacob no longer lives like an ordinary man. From the moment he decided to leave his home, something inside him split into two opposing halves. One half is still a husband trying to convince himself that distance is the best way to protect Naomi. The other half is an undercover operative being swallowed deeper and deeper by that secret organization, to the point where even he no longer feels certain which parts of himself are real and which parts exist only to serve the role he has been forced to play. The isolation he chose was supposed to be a strategic measure, but as time passes, it increasingly feels like a form of self-punishment. He left Naomi to reduce the danger, but that very decision may have opened a far more terrifying door. Naomi is no longer beside him, which means she has become a separate target, easier to reach, easier to manipulate, and most dangerously of all, easier to use as leverage if someone inside the plasma ring has already begun to sense that something is wrong. This new mission placed on Jacob is unlike anything he has faced before. It is not a simple errand meant to test his loyalty, not a drop-off, a delivery, or a psychological test like the earlier stages of infiltration. This mission feels more like a direct shove toward the edge of a cliff, a brutal trial by far usually reserved for those standing very close to the center of power. The most terrifying part is not the task itself, but the message behind it. Either Jacob obeys and stains his hands so deeply that there is no turning back, or he refuses and turns himself into a living question mark, an unavoidable source of suspicion in the eyes of those already watching him. He has been pushed into the truest kind of impossible position, where every option comes at a price, and every price could become a disaster. One delayed reaction, one hesitant glance, one question asked at the wrong moment, one decision lacking total conviction, and his entire cover could shatter in a single night. What Jacob fears most now is no longer obvious danger, but the feeling that a pair of invisible eyes has been following him for a very long time. It is a chilling instinct that creeps into every small movement, making him question everything: the car parked too long across the street, the call that disconnects the moment he answers, the shadow passing through the corner of a mirror, even the strange coincidence in how certain members of the organization have begun to behave around him. If someone truly has started to suspect Jacob's real identity, that may be even more horrifying than being suddenly exposed. It would mean he has already been placed under a microscope, that every word, every habit, every route he takes may already have been dismantled, analyzed, and connected by a mind colder and more patient than he ever imagined. When an undercover operative does not know how long he has been under surveillance, That is when he is at his most vulnerable, because every survival instinct begins to move more slowly than fear. Smitty understands that better than anyone, but even he is being stretched to his breaking point. His work as an investigative journalist has taught him to believe in facts, in evidence, in logic, yet the plasma ring operates through fear, layered disguises, and hidden power that leaves behind no obvious trace. The deeper he digs, the more Smitty realizes this is not just an ordinary criminal network. It functions like a parasitic living thing embedded inside the community itself, one that knows how to befriend, how to observe, and how to borrow people's greed, desperation, and personal humiliation in order to turn them into links in its chain. What he and Jacob have uncovered so far is only the scratched surface. Beneath that lies a machine far more complex, far crueler, and most terrifying of all, one that seems far closer to the Dupree family than anyone ever imagined. The revelation about the plasma ring does not arrive like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. It feels more like a silent crack in a wall that has been there for a long time, until one day the whole thing collapses at once. For weeks, suspicion revolved only around the obvious names, the faces that looked shady. The people standing close enough to the shadows that both viewers and the characters themselves could easily point fingers. But because everyone kept staring at the most obvious suspects, the truth had the perfect chance to slip past in silence. The member of the plasma ring no one expected is not simply an exposed villain. This is the kind of character standing at the dangerous intersection of pity and rage, of a wounded past and disastrous choices, of feeling cornered for too long and the hunger for power that grows out of helplessness. It could be someone who once approached Jacob as if they wanted to help him, someone who appeared at just the right moment like a rare ally, someone who did just enough to win his trust. Or it could be someone who has lingered around the Dupree family for a long time, watching the luxury, watching power passed around like inherited property, quietly nurturing a resentment no one ever noticed. If that person is Keel, the shock will come from realizing that his reckless exterior, which seemed to represent only personal chaos, was actually hiding ties to a far larger criminal structure. If it is Carlton, the impact would be even more devastating, because it would destroy the very concept of trust within the closest inner circle. But more frightening than any specific name is the motive behind it. If the betrayer joined the plasma ring not because they were evil from the start, but because they were forced into it, because of debt, because they wanted to save someone they loved, because they had been crushed so badly that they no longer believed in the honest path, then this confrontation will no longer be a simple divide between good and evil. It will become the most painful conflict of all, when Jacob must face someone who has done wrong, but is not entirely without humanity. Someone who may be a danger yet also the only path leading to the person truly standing behind the curtain. Because the slasher, the name whispered as a symbol of terror, may never have been the final layer at all. That nickname is almost too perfect as a decoy, too dramatic not to draw all attention toward itself, and for that reason, too ideal not to be part of a calculated misdirection. The deeper the investigation goes, the stronger the feeling becomes that the slasher is merely the executioner. The frightening face designed to make every grudge and every pursuit rush in one direction, while the true mastermind remains calm in a safe corner. What the plasma ring is trafficking, the thing so terrifying that everyone recoils from it, is no longer just a question of illegal goods. It is a question of control, of bribery networks, of secrets powerful enough to destroy the honor, future, and even the life of anyone who dares oppose it. It may be the flow of dirty money, medical data, altered evidence, or an underground trafficking line connected to people no one dares challenge. Or it may be something even more dangerous than ordinary contraband, power itself, packaged as information and dependency. Jacob is beginning to understand that this investigation no longer allows him to think like a man whose only job is to catch criminals. If he discovers the identity of that secret member, the right move may not be to arrest them immediately. Arresting them might destroy one link in the chain. Protecting them, or pretending not to know, might lead him to the center of the entire network. The problem is that such a strategy requires a kind of coldness that borders on cruelty. It would force Jacob to watch a betrayer continue to walk free, to accept the risk that more people could be hurt, to play the role of a man who knows nothing while his anger and sense of justice scream inside him. This is the kind of choice that tears a person apart from within. He wants to end it all immediately, but he also knows that acting too soon could destroy the entire chance to unmask the mastermind. And so Jacob is trapped between the instinct to protect the people he loves and the duty to destroy the organization, between justified rage and the patience that cruelty sometimes demands. Meanwhile, on what seems like a separate front, Martin's family is also cracking in a quiet but equally dangerous way. Martin is so consumed by his re-election campaign that he is nearly living like a machine powered by schedules, speeches, public smiles, and strategic calculations. He can still speak beautifully about family. He can still appear as the mature, devoted, trustworthy man everyone expects. But that very precision has made the distance between him and the people he loves more obvious than ever. Smitty is not naive enough to miss the fact that every attempt Martin makes to reconnect feels haunted by campaign season. That does not necessarily mean Martin is entirely false. The tragedy is that he may genuinely love his family, genuinely want to be close to Smitty and Samantha, yet no longer know how to reach them without the polished shell of the man trying to preserve his public image. That confusion between sincerity and calculation is exactly what erodes trust most deeply. Samantha is standing between two adults who are so busy fighting their own battles that neither is truly looking at how overwhelmed she has become. Prom night should have been an ordinary teenage milestone, something to look forward to, a rare bright spot in school life. But beneath the surface, it is building into an explosion point for all kinds of other pressure. Samantha is not only worried about dresses, friends, or the impression she will make that night. She is struggling with the feeling that her family has become a stage where everyone is playing roles too perfectly to tell the truth. One parent is too busy playing the ideal candidate. The other is caught in secrets powerful enough to swallow the whole family whole. And she, the child who should have been heard first, has been reduced to a small detail in the schedules of adults. That is why the prom has become more than a school event. It is the final test of whether this family can still sit beside one another as real human beings, or whether all that remains is the image of togetherness preserved by pure momentum. Her fear for her grandmother only makes Samantha feel even more suffocated. Anita is the emotional anchor of the family in a way no one else can be, the person who brings stability into a world shaking from illness, politics, secrets, and ambition. The sudden decline in Anita's health after her latest round of chemotherapy is not merely a medical setback. It feels like an alarm pulling the entire family out of their self-deception that there is still plenty of time left. Anita seems to understand that better than anyone. The surprise gift she has prepared for Vernon is not simply an expression of gratitude. It carries the shadow of a woman trying to reclaim some sense of control in the face of her body's betrayal. When life no longer feels guaranteed, people often stop wanting to leave explanations behind and instead want to leave memories, something beautiful enough, complete enough, personal enough for the ones left behind to cling to if everything gets worse. That is what makes Anita's gift to Vernon so haunting. She does not say it aloud, but every choice she makes carries the quiet fear of time running out. Why would she insist on doing this when she is at her weakest, unless she senses something in her body is changing? Why does she still try to look strong, still keep her face calm, still force herself to smile, unless she knows Vernon has already carried too much while standing beside her? Anita does not want her gift to be seen as a goodbye, yet the urgency and the exhaustion she can barely hide give it that meaning all the same. If Vernon realizes that behind the surprise lies his wife's silent fear, he will not only be moved, he will be terrified, because there is no fear greater than realizing that the person you love may be quietly preparing for a future neither of you dares to name. Vernon has always been the steady one, the supporter, the pillar who stands tall and composed. But behind that steadiness is a man who is exhausted by helplessness. He can encourage Anita, hold her hand, and remain beside her through every phase of treatment, but he cannot endure the illness in her place. Watching the person you love slowly weaken while all you can do is offer the best version of comfort is its own form of silent torture. If Anita's gift truly carries a deeper meaning, Vernon will be forced to face what he has tried so hard to avoid, that Anita's courage may not come only from hope, but also from a desperate attempt to spare him more pain if the worst day eventually comes. When placed side by side, these four storylines are not separate at all. Jacob is running along the line between life and death with a mission that could burn everything down in a single night. Smitty is both a key part of the investigation and a man inside a family slowly falling apart under the weight of silences no one is willing to break. Martin thinks he is fighting to preserve his position and secure the future, but the tighter he clings to power, the more he loses the people who matter most. Samantha has been left behind in a house full of adults too busy to see how exhausted she really is. Anita is trying to turn love into one final gift of tenderness, while Vernon is trying not to collapse under the feeling that the worst may be closer than any of them have dared admit. Above all of it, the plasma ring continues tightening its grip in silence. It is not merely a criminal organization. It is the cruelest test of loyalty, love, and endurance for every person in Fairmont Crest, because the most horrifying thing is not being attacked by an enemy from the outside. It is realizing that the darkness has been inside the house for a very long time. A familiar face may be the betraying link. Someone who once reached out to help may have been quietly leading everyone into a trap. The mission given to Jacob may not simply be a test, but a carefully arranged execution waiting for him to make one mistake. A prom night may become the night when years of buried emotions finally explode. A romantic gift may become the most painful memory of a marriage that once seemed unbreakable. And when all of those things collide, no one will be able to hold on to the safe image they once built. The real storm is not about deciding who is good and who is evil. It lies in the moment when every person is cornered and forced to choose what they are willing to sacrifice in order to survive. Jacob may have to let a tragic figure continue playing the betrayer in order to reach the mastermind. Smitty may have to choose between exposing the truth and keeping what remains of his family from breaking apart. Martin may discover that power means nothing if, by the time he turns back, the door to his own home has already closed in a way that cannot be undone. Vernon may have to face the terror of losing Anita while still forcing himself to smile in front of her. And Anita, the woman quietly gathering the last pieces of love she has left to give away, may be the very heart that forces everyone around her to wake up too late. Fairmont Crest is entering the stage where every mask begins to crack. The darkness is no longer lingering at the edge of the frame. It has stepped directly into the center, touching every family, every relationship, every ambition. Jacob may still have a chance to get out, but every step he takes from here will feel like walking on shattered glass. One wrong sound, one wrong look, one trust placed in the wrong person, and the entire game will collapse. And when the truth about the plasma ring finally comes out, what shocks everyone most may not be the identity of the traitor, but the fact that they loved, trusted, protected, or forgave that person for far too long. By the time the truth is clear, there may be no way back for anyone.